In life, we come across two types of people: those that want things to happen and those that make things happen. From the conversations I've had so far, I've gathered that becoming the driving force that makes a difference comes with four things: precise understanding of how society works, selfless love for others in your community, curiosity towards figuring out how to transfer your creativity to other spaces, and a vision that you wholeheartedly believe in. When you decide to take the first step towards making that change, you're filled with hope that people will see your vision, that they trust in your abilities, and that it will work out because it just makes sense. What people don't often talk about is that the bigger picture that you have set in stone is the key thing that will still have you putting one foot in front of the other in the midst of all this rejection. I'm Deb Shaw, and this
is Take Two.
Sick, and I lied to you as well, so
Yeah, we've been chugging water over here, so just in case we pause it. I brought you down to Portobello, your favorite place.
yeah, it is. It's kind of sad now, actually, to be honest with you. I haven't had to, hang out here really in the last year and a half or more, I think now, isn't it? Since the fences got put up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. For anyone that doesn't know what the crack is in Portobello, let's take it back a notch.
Yeah.
So of course this was set up right around like 2004-ish when skaters started coming around here.
Yeah, so the current plaza, or the one that's currently being like redesigned, was built in about 2004, and I think it might have been actually 2005 before it was fully open to the public. But yeah, just by nature of its design, complete fluke, no consultation with skateboarders or anything like that. Skating was very, very small in Ireland at that time, but its kind of open plan layout allowed for a lot of freedom of movements with skateboarding and otherwise with BMXing and rollerblading and whatnot. But predominantly with skateboarding, due to the ledges, they were made of I think it was like a calc limestone, like really commonly found around Dublin, but like really, really durable material, really good for skateboarding, quite an enjoyable thing to skate. So yeah, back in 2004, 2005, Portobello was constructed, and it kind of quickly became one of the best go-to skateboarding spots in all of Ireland. So yeah, like from there, the council had put skate stoppers on it to detract skateboarders from going, because they obviously seen it as a sort of like an insurance issue, or even just as a social issue. They just didn't really like the idea of a lot of young people hanging around in a space kind of uncontrolled, let's say.
Which is all of Ireland.
Yeah. So the skate stoppers were a shame. A couple of years after they had been put on, I was talking to a local guard who told me that it was actually one person who complained in the area to the council that managed to actually to the Fianna Fáil local minister at the time. I think it's Jim O'Callaghan. So one person had the power over so many young people who used the space. Yeah, it was positively to ruin it, frankly, for a lot of people. And once the skate stoppers got put on, a lot of the skateboarders would have stopped coming. Like prior to that, you had skaters coming from all across the city, like on a weekly basis, so it was a very dynamic kind of group of people that were doing this activity together, free of charge. Like, there's no entry fee, there's nothing like that. And then quickly, once the skate stoppers were put onto the ledges, it ruined that for a lot of people. So it's a shame looking back on it now, because like I grew up around Portobello. I grew up in Rathmines, went to school there, everything. Started skating at Portobello because of that space, because I seen skateboarders there. A lot of my other friends did too. And when those skate stoppers were put on, it just deterred a lot of the young people, especially from Charlemont Flats at the time, were really into it, and it was a great facility for them to have. And as soon as that skate stoppers went on, it just ruined the atmosphere, and it ruined the vibe of the space.
Probably makes people angry too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the time, it's nearly hard to, again, skating was so small and so new, especially to Ireland at that time, that there had only been instances of skate stopping in a handful of other spaces, like most notably probably Baggot Street, Bank of Ireland, which would have been one of the best spots in the world, frankly, before they skate stopped it. Yeah. But it was just, I guess at the time, it was just one of those things that you know, this always happens, you know. Portobello hadn't really kicked off as like the space that it is now in that, and the history that it's created up to this point. You know, it was just another new spot that was being built. And especially around that time, you know, we were right in the middle of the Celtic Tiger. So there were spaces like that kind of popping up all over the place. So it was like, maybe there'll be somewhere else that, you know, eventually comes and pops up. But nothing really did out of the Celtic Tiger from that. You know, Portobello was special in that its location was very central. You know, it was a safe enough neighborhood for most people to come to and, you know, practice skateboarding without getting hassled and stuff like that, you know. And eventually over time, a lot of skateboarders just removed those skate stoppers, you know, just took a hammer to it, whatever you had to do, got rid of them and just started skating it again and returned it to somewhat of its, you know, previous status as the go-to space in Dublin for skateboarding, you know. And from there, then the culture kind of progressed and grew up around it, and we were left to our own devices for a long time as well. You know, we didn't really have that much input from the council about what we were doing and stuff, you know, which was good because it just allowed us our freedom, you know. There were other attempts to skate stop it, but we had a event here in, I think it was 2011, with DC, you know, the shoe company.
Yes.
Brought over, I don't know, maybe 10 professional skateboarders, and it was the DC King of Dublin event, which was actually held at Portobello. And that was a big step for Dublin in general to allow something like that to happen in a public space. Previously, it would often have to happen in a very controlled environment, you know, very, very controlled. So that was amazing to see that happen there. And what they actually allowed for was the removal of skate stoppers and the addition of angle iron on the sides of the ledges, because in their mind, they didn't want to see the ledges damaged.
Okay.
Even though, I mean, that stone is not going anywhere too fast, you know. But the event had finished, and for a couple of months or more afterwards, the angle iron remained in place. So we thought, oh, the spot is liberated. You know, the signs are still up saying that you can't skate, but actually, you know, the council knowingly implemented these things, so it's okay. And you know, the next day, you know, random day, whenever it was, a couple of months after the event, new skate stoppers were added, and then you went through the whole same thing again. Knock them off, keep using it, say nothing, you know, just everyone knows what happens here, everyone's actually fine with it. But you know, on the official like council status or stance is that skateboarding isn't allowed there, you know. So
And now there's that hotel.
yeah. So in 2008, there was a planning application that went in on the building adjacent to the public space. So it's important for people to realize that what they would have known as that sort of plaza or square, whatever you want to call it, is actually public space, and that the building immediately butting onto that, which was previously Portobello College, the Atlas Language School, I think it was, and a warehouse and a few other bits. It's all like, obviously they have access to that space, but it's not owned by them, you know. So in 2008, there was a planning application that went in to change that building, which was used at the college at the time, to a medical center, which would have been fine. You know, I think the design wasn't, you know, much different to what was there, and you know, it's a 9 to 5 sort of building usage that it would have been for. So it kind of would have suited us, no problem. You know, most people skate after school or after work in the evenings and stuff, so it's all well and good. But the crash came shortly after that, and nothing ever happened. And in 2018, I think it was, a new planning application 10 years after the first one went in for a hotel, a 6-story hotel, quite large, a lot of bed space. Really negative for us because a hotel is a 24/7 used building, you know. It's people coming and going all the time, and
Butlers, security,
yeah,
paying tourists.
exactly, everything. Yeah, so like the tourism sort of mammoth that Dublin has become was kind of spreading all around the city. It wasn't just Portobello, it was places like the Tivoli or the Hangar and many other spaces, you know. Even still today, you know, it's happening nonstop, you know.
So many hotels.
So many hotels. Like tourism it's such a massive factor in how the city's changed over the last couple of years. And you know, no one ever really wants to speak negatively about it here, I find, which is quite interesting. You know, you see in Barcelona, for instance, it's massive. You know, the anti-tourism sentiment is actually on a really, you know, in your face level as you walk through the streets and stuff like that. I don't want to see that happen here. I still think Dublin should be a very friendly place, but I do think that the the residents of the city just haven't been looked after by their council for many a year, you know. And the intensification of hotel development and office developments within the two canals has further just torn the city apart. And like it's interesting because Dublin's population within the two canals today is actually lower than it was 100 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, like 100 years ago, it wasn't a good scenario whatsoever. You had tenements left, right, and center. Every bit of Georgian Dublin was 50 people in a building, give or take. In some instances, it was really bad scenario. And then from that, we got a lot of suburban development in Crumlin and Drimna and Coolock. Loads and loads of places. And that was beneficial because people were given front garden, back garden, their own beds, their own bedrooms, all of this stuff, but what we lost from that actually was the city, because the city was then essentially cleared out of people and just replaced with, in most cases, office block development throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s. So if you go to areas around Stephen's Green today, like large sections of those areas didn't really exist in the form that they do now. They would have been actually quite bustling places, at least with people in them, before the like the slum clearances and whatnot. But I think that is something that had to happen. Like, we had to change how we house people, home people, whatever, and it needed to happen. But the foresight of the city was left behind, and then from there, developers were able to take over all of Dublin and kind of change it into this, this great place to be if you're a property developer, but outside of that, not very nice atmosphere or place to go and do things in. So
I know. I was speaking to Shane Fleming, who's massive in the real estate field, both in Dublin. He's from Dublin, but right now he's in New York. And he was kind of just talking about how, when it comes to Dublin, considering what it's trying to become in terms of becoming like an international, not even competitor, but like, essentially you're competing with London, you're competing with New York, but now we've got Facebook, we've got Google and all that. And what's happening is they're not building up.
Yeah.
So Dublin wants to be big and all business, but right now it's not all that. So what's happening is everyone's in this really weird limbo where you have to move to Dublin if you want to find a job, but good luck finding a place. Like, you've got people working at Facebook that are kind of like, am I going to be homeless?
Yeah.
Like, I have so much in my bank account right now, but I can't find a place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of like, when he said that, I was like, no, but like, Dublin doesn't need skyscrapers. Like, it's so nice. But unfortunately, that is the solution. I think then where we got to after that was, what is architecture going to look like?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the time people kind of I think what's happening right now with architects, engineers, and all that kind of stuff is they're not looking at timelessness, essentially, where, when you pause by somewhere and you're like, oh, wow, this is a really nice looking, like, it's really old and whatever.
Yeah.
Right now, things are going to last like 100 years.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Max.
Yeah.
As in, imagine if Dublin were to be designed in such a way where, okay, look, there's more people here, we have to deal with millions, and we need to house them. We need to. Our only option is building up, because not everyone can afford. Right now, let's face it, no one's going to be putting deposits on 400k, 500k places, probably going up to $1 million. Flats are what's going to be.
Yeah.
Let's design them a little bit nicely. Fuck the fucking boutique flat things where it's like $3,000. Like, no, we do not need luxury cars downstairs. As in, we don't need a cinema in our place.
Yeah.
We've got really nice cinemas in Dublin. Like, stop that.
Absolutely.
So he kind of changed my perspective a little bit on that, where right now it's just the decision making in Dublin is very built to rent, but
it is.
You're not renting out to the people that need it.
So I know this is a massive veer away from the Portobello situation, but I would love to jump into the housing standpoint, because like, my background is in construction.
Oh yeah, you work in.
Yeah.
Do you still work in?
Oh yeah, still.
Yeah, exactly. So you know it firsthand.
Monday to Saturday, and still massive interest in developments and housing and just construction in general and construction methods and regulations and all that stuff, it's always been very fascinating to me to understand them. And, you know, there's a lot of propaganda that's put into place by developers through various means. You can see it through the Irish Times day upon day, on behalf of, you know, developer jargon and developer speak and stuff like that. And I get where people come from when they talk about high rise, but if you look at a functional city, I think Paris is a very good example of which. Paris has a designated area for high rise, which we would have had we not kind of missed the boat on that, being Grand Canal Dock and probably, I suppose, the North Wall, East Wall area to an extent as well. You know, they are areas where they were just previously warehouses. We knew they were going to be turned into these new silicone docks or whatever, you know, and we still kept a height restriction on a lot of those buildings, which was, I think, a bit of a mistake. The interesting thing with the spire as well is when the spire was done, it was done at a time when the Celtic Tiger was at its height, and the idea was that we are now disobeying this height restriction that we've put ourselves under for so long, and that's why it is just a large flagpole, basically. You know?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but then shortly after the crash, with so many unrealized developments, we said, actually, let's pull back from the madness and not do what we were thinking about doing there, because people come to Dublin because it is a historic city. You know, it was founded about 1,000 years ago as a Viking settlement, but our council's office block is literally plonked on top of the original settlement itself with just reinforced concrete. The history to that alone is shocking. Like, and a friend of mine always says that, you know, Dublin City Council is an occupational force, and when they do things like that, it actually rings true, right?
In fairness, Shane, he said that as well, where they kind of shoot themselves in the foot and spend a lot of taxpayer money just fighting against plans or projects that would actually benefit the community or help. What were we calling them? I think we were calling them like local landlords or like small landlords that wanted to build a place with just like 6 rooms, you know, for students and all that. And it's like, no, only 100 rooms plus. And it's like, mate.
That was part of a change in the national framework in, I think it was 2017, when Owen Murphy was the Fine Gael's housing minister at the time, and he ripped up the planning rule book that's been in place since, give or take, the 70s, obviously always amended and changed. But that was the thing, is that no longer are you looking at trying to stop developers, you know, making too many rooms in one specific place. It was actually a change to be like, get as much as you possibly can in there, and we'll allow you to reduce the standards of construction as well. Like, I would never buy an apartment in this country because I've seen how they're built. I've seen how bad the work is, and I see how quickly they go up and how minimal effort and thought is put into them. And an example of this is that I thought for a long time that the Beacon in Sandyford, which is, you know, full of lovely fancy glass office, with the hospitals there, but just right adjacent to it is all of the apartments and stuff. And I thought, wow, they are like, look like a very high spec.
Yeah, they look gorgeous.
Apartment. They look beautiful. And actually they are the same as very many other apartment blocks all across Ireland, in that they're condemned for fire regulations. They're very, very unsafe places to live. Never mind spend 600 grand on buying a two bedroom flat. You know, like Priory Hall is the most glaring example of it, where people had taken out mortgages, and, you know, there was suicide over this issue, where people had taken out these massive mortgages. Obviously the crash had come, but then also they find out that they're not even allowed to live in the apartments that they purchased because they're that dangerous. You know, the Grenfell Tower in London was it sent massive shockwaves across all of the UK in terms of what they were building and how they were building it. And it really should have done the same here too, because we do have those same issues. So when you're talking about kind of construction and how we're going to get all of these people into one place to live, and the idea of, you know, high rises there, okay, I can accept that, but I think it's actually its use isn't. It's not as useful as people kind of tend to make it out to be. Paris is 5-6 stories for the most part across the whole city, and it works really well because you cannot put too many people into one place. It puts too much pressure on local services, be it transport or food, schools. You know, if you just start putting up these high rises, you know, wherever, it's just gonna, you know, it's gonna put too many people in one place at one time. So there's no, to my mind, I just can't really see a joint up thinking between different councils and, you know, even the national government. And like to this day, the reason why Dublin is how it is in terms of where its suburbs are and why they are there, you know, why is it that working class areas are predominantly in West Dublin? You know, there's always this funny thing of like North Side, South Side Dublin, but actually, if you look at the geography and the, you know, the what is it like, you know, class differences, let's say, across Dublin, it's actually all east to west. Like the further east you go, the more wealthy it becomes, and east is anywhere from Howth across to Killiney, work your way down across Dublin Bay from Clontarf to Blackrock. All of those places are very, very wealthy. And then once you start moving west, it's when you start getting into areas like as far as Blanchardstown or Finglas or wherever it is, you know. And at the time, Crumlin and Drimna would have been very far west in terms of Dublin City, you know. But why is it that Dublin City Council are the ones that have all of those areas in them and not South Dublin County Council or maybe large parts of Fingal? And it's because even as far back as the 50s and 60s and 70s, the councils weren't, you know, talking to each other in terms of joint up planning and thinking. South Dublin County Council, or actually, sorry, Dunleary Rathdown at the time, didn't want to take the burden of depopulating the city of its slums and rehousing people. They didn't want to do that. So they didn't. And then what happened from that is there was all this green space around the sort of southeast of Dublin City, which then became this very, very wealthy area. So, and then you don't have that mix, you know, because that mix is important to not have an area, you know, become a ghetto essentially. You know, you know, you need a kind of a mix of, and you'll hear this all the time, you need a mix of like high incomes, low incomes, all of these things, you know, be it even in apartment blocks to housing estates and whatnot.
Yes.
And that's why if you look today, you know, UCD and its surrounding areas and stuff like that are very kind of high, you know, upper middle class, and there's not very many working class areas around them, and all the working class areas were kind of pushed into West Dublin. You know, and again, like we're still in this situation now where we have like 4 or 5 different councils for Dublin alone, and not very many of them are joining up and thinking together. It's
and why do you think that's the case?
I think that local democracy and local governance in Ireland is incredibly poor, and like I've spent time in Denmark and Sweden trying to understand exactly what it is that makes those places great. And it's actually local governance. It's being able to talk to someone on the ground about an issue and sorting it out, and people really having a vision about where it is that they're living. They put quite a lot into their like services there, you know, and a lot of thought goes into it, whereas that doesn't happen here. And I think some of that comes from when the Free State was formed in Ireland, and we kind of wanted to like rip up everything the British had done here, you know. And part of that was the local governance structure that they had, which actually was probably quite a good thing, you know, because you had early councils, like for instance Rathmines would have had its own township, which was essentially a council. Donnybrook would have had its own. I think Cabra might have had its own, and there's a few other places. But these were local structures that actually sourced their own water and waste and stuff like that, you know, and sewage treatment, whatever it was, and made sure the lighting was correct and stuff like that. You know,
like you had your own like council, like
exactly.
your local. You would be voting for, of course, like your national election, but then your local council elections were happening.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Now we still have that obviously to this day, but I think that the councillors in, you know, Ireland have very little to actually do, or sorry, they have quite a lot to do, but they have very little power, let's say, you know.
They
which
have
is a shame.
Go to a boss, and then there are other
exactly, you know, if you have enough followers on Twitter, if you have enough followers on Twitter, I think you can make a bigger impact, and that's a shame. That's because this is the system that we rely upon to change things for the better, you know. And it is the way it is, that like, you know, certain people with a bit of clout online can make something change, whereas the people who have been elected by people in their area, whatever it is, have to struggle day in and day out to try and make any changes at all. And then there was a lot of corruption issues in Ireland throughout the 70s and 80s, and a lot of that was centered upon local politics too. So over time, the power has been eroded from local governance, and it's all very top heavy now. So you don't really go to your councillor for very many issues. You'd actually just try and bypass them and get to a minister. But a minister shouldn't be dealing with local issues. They should be dealing with national issues, you know. And again, like if you look around places that do it very well, I think Germany probably does it very well, but like certainly the Nordic countries do it incredibly well. And I think the reason is because their local governance is really, really strong, very watertight, like, you know. And if you want to make a change there are avenues to walk into a building and make that change quickly without having to like rip your hair out, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
there's reason and you know, there's foresight. I think there's very little foresight here.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a lot to like uncover.
Yeah.
And I think it sometimes comes down to the concept of, as humans, I think we love to be in control of things.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I probably struggled with when it came to just working here, just like a normal like office job, people love to be in control of everything, and like they don't really allow that freedom for you to fuck up nearly.
Yeah.
And I completely understand how, if you were to put like transfer said humans from the office to becoming like a politician, where it's like, no, CC me in all the email. No, I have to give the say. I have to give the yes or no, which then just slows down any decision making process, because you're always waiting for a confirmation nearly.
Yeah.
Too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'll make the point there now that like the reason why the project we completed in this year, where we built a you know, a ramp for a lot of kids on the island who had nothing else to do, is because we cancelled out quite a lot of those factors.
I was literally about to ask you, like I have it written down here.
Yeah.
Planning permission. How did you actually get it?
So look, where we built that ramp is a place called Oírr, and it's one of the 3 Aran Islands just off the coast of Galway. There's about 285 people, give or take, who live on the island. Might be a bit more now. It's the only island in Ireland, to my knowledge, that's actually growing in population. And it's a fantastic place to live in many ways. Obviously, there's struggles.
Is there much to do?
Like,
would you consider living there?
I would, actually. Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful place. There's very few places in Ireland that top that level of beauty,
Really?
you know, but obviously that's not everything, you know, you have to think about more factors than that.
Okay, is there a school?
Oh, there is, yeah, there's 2 schools, primary
Hospital?
and secondary. There's a nurse and a doctor, but if you had any issues, you'd be airlifted to Galway. And actually, I think, I could be wrong with this, but the irony is that you might actually get there quicker than if you, you know, called an ambulance. Especially in Dublin, I think now, like if you were to ring an ambulance, you could be waiting quite.
Oh yeah, you had like an issue with your head, right?
Yeah, I took a spill a couple of years ago, and now in fairness, the ambulance was with me very quick, but I was, you know, bleeding from my head and told that I'd be waiting at least 13 hours in the waiting room to be seen, and I said, fuck, I'll go home, you know.
You went home?
Yeah, I was fine in the end, but
did you need stitches actually?
No,
just wash your head.
Glue, you know. Glue would actually do a lot for you.
Look, there was this one time, right? I remember I was 8 years old, obviously not skateboarding, in some woods, don't ask me where, and we were a group of kids, there was another group of kids, and one of the dogs started barking, called Bruce.
Yeah.
And I remember like scurrying away and whatnot, and then these kids decided to start throwing rocks.
Oh no.
Well, dun, feel a thump on my head. And I would have never gotten stitches ever. And I just remember going like this,
yeah,
you know, and then looking down and it's just like dripping.
Yeah.
I screamed because I was scared of the blood, and I was scared of getting stitches because my brother used to get stitches all the time growing up. And I just remember my dad pouring like a jerry can of water on my head. Grand.
Yeah.
It's just the blood just gushing all the time.
Oh, the healthcare situation here is quite scary. I'm glad I'm at the age I'm at right now, because if it's still this bad in 40 years time or something like that,
oh yeah,
big trouble. Like really big trouble.
I know,
you know?
I know. Like that's going to be really, I'm excited to grow up even more, just to see, just curiosity.
Yeah.
What are we going to have?
Yeah. I don't know. And again, like, you know, there's something nice about actually being in Oírr, in a small island, because you have to be a lot more self-reliant than you would be on the mainland. You know, you have to make things work, whatever it is at your disposal, be it for constructing things or dealing with things and stuff like that. You know, you have to be a little bit more.
And you have to like consider what you're bringing in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you have to stock up as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you could have days where, weeks, if the cargo ship can't land in the middle of a bad winter, you know, you could be stuck without a lot of supplies. You know, it's it is a reality. You know, but yeah, like when you have a community like that, it is very close. you know, it's not all dreamland. You know, there's the same issues you get everywhere else in the world in these places, but it's very, you can make decisions very quick if you want to. You know, you're not as reliant upon several different bodies to give you an A-OK as you would be here, for instance. Like, we got contacted by Dún Laoghaire at Down to build a skate park in Dún Laoghaire by the West Pier, and I think it's going to be a great project. But I was contacted about that back in May, and here we are coming into winter, you know, middle of September, and I'm being told that actually, yeah, no, it's still going to happen. It's just going to take a while longer than we thought. Well, why is it? Oh, because Irish Water have to do a survey. You know, it's like, really? You know, is that we could have had that park that summer.
Skate park.
Yeah, but that park could have been ready that summer, and
Yeah,
you know, you just miss these opportunities. Like, and the thing with Inisheer was why we wanted to get out there quickly and do what we done was because there was a group of actually quite keen skateboarders. You know, they'd skate every day together. They're only about 11, 12 years old, but they're really, really into it. But they hadn't actually got anything, and we can complain about it in Dublin with lack of spots, but like really there was nothing there, you know. So had we waited and gone through the proper channels, let's say, of getting a skate park, on average to get a skate park anywhere in Ireland takes about 7 years between planning, fundraising, petitioning, all of that stuff. Those kids would be 18, you know, they would have been going to college, left, whatever it is, and all the kids in between, you know, that time when the skate park wasn't built would have never picked it up because the facility wasn't there. So for us to go over there and put a sort of a stopgap measure in place of the mini ramp, it was a beautiful project. We got a great reception
of the mini ramp actually. While you're
yeah, for sure. I'm not actually sure where you might find it. Sorry, I sent it to you. Apologies. Yeah. So, you know, it was just such a beautiful project to do, but this could be replicated everywhere. And my actual thinking process of this was that if this could be done in such a you know, let's say low density area, or, you know, like random place, in the sense that it could be done just about everywhere. There's no reason so many more towns and villages across Ireland shouldn't have these facilities, you know. And again, it's not that expensive. Like, we fundraised
how much did that cost you?
We fundraised about €4,000 to construct that ramp. Now that was just with materials, and then it was all you know, it was all
like self.
Yeah, well, we brought over our own crew of people who just wanted to do it because we love skateboarding, you know, really and truly. So, you know, with labor costs and stuff like that, I mean, things are skyrocketing again now, but you could do a project like that under 15 grand and it'll be done quite well, you know. But obviously the goal here in the long term is to get a concrete skate park, you know, a permanent one.
Yeah.
But again, those things do take quite a long time. Even though they shouldn't, they still do. And like I said, in between that time, there's a missed opportunity for young people to not have access to these things, you know.
I know. It's actually lovely to just, I think that's the one thing that I find fascinating about the skateboarding community in general, is how willing and determined and passionate everyone is to make a difference. That's the one thing. Even if you just like want to just skateboard, grand, and you don't want to do all this active stuff, it's so interesting. I feel like there's no other community that I could think of. Like, surfing community would be kind of similar. Yes, there's like sports clubs, but I feel like this is the only community that doesn't have training to go to, no coaches, and it just ends up like, how the fuck did you find people that wanted to work for free
for like 5-6 days straight? It was incredibly easy. It was too easy, actually. It was nearly, I was trying to keep this as low key as possible.
Probably,
so many people, imagine. Anyone who heard about it wanted to do it, and you know, you just couldn't. You had to keep it kind of low numbers just for like making my life easier. I think more than anything else. Because then
you have to coordinate everything, safety. I'm assuming
exactly. Yeah, so
6 days. Look at that.
Yeah.
And how did you? Was it just your construction background that made you like figure out these things?
Yeah, like I've built them before, so it wasn't really that big of a challenge. It was actually really nice to be able to like design and construct it, because usually like my day job is just construction. I'm not really involved in the design. You get drawings and you build them and you figure out ways how to build them, but you're not actually like changing them. So to do this was nice. And you know, just the design aspect of it was very, very fun to be a part of. But you just know what works after skating for, I've been skating for like 15 years. So you kind of just know what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't and stuff, So like for that, I had to do something where those kids had never dropped in before. I couldn't do something too big for them, but I couldn't do something too small either, because then they'd quickly get bored of it,
Exactly.
So I had to get this kind of middle ground where it was like, right, it's just a really, really fun, good ramp to skate, no matter what your level is. But you can also learn on it too.
Yeah.
So that, like, when we construct skate parks in this country, we don't consult the end users, which is a massive, massive mistake. And this is what we're trying to change now. But you could spend $250,000 on a skate park like you would out in Ballyfermot, and actually, if you'd spent 1/5 of that, you probably could have gotten a better skate park. Which is the shame.
If you want to know what challenges them, what excites them, what they want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's just look, the people who do, design skate parks in this country, more often than not, don't skate. And it's a huge, huge factor. It's just, you wouldn't design a wave for a surfer if you didn't surf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As in.
So if I were to put the ball in your court, like, we're gonna build your dream skate park.
Yeah.
What would it consist of?
Like, for me, it's going to be different to other people, and especially my age is
or
also
like your
a factor.
Group.
Yeah, like, personally speaking, what I like to see is a space like Portobello, obviously maybe a bit more, larger space anyway, but you want somewhere that, in my opinion, what I would like to see is, I don't actually want a skate park, funny enough. Skate parks don't really interest me that much. I think they're good facilities, they're good for learning, they're good for getting people into it and stuff like that. But frankly, like, I think skateboarding has a bigger social potential than to be within this cage, these cages, and, just put into this space and just do it there. Because skateboarding, at the end of the day, is about using what's all around you. It's very like, it's nearly like, a lot of it relies upon your initiative and your creativity and how you skate.
It's like spatial.
Yeah, it's spatial as well. And you don't, like, I make this point to a lot of people, like, there's great skate spots in Sandyford Industrial Estate, but nobody wants to spend their weekends there every weekend because it's an incredibly dull place. But Portobello, even when it's skate stopped, is a lesser skateboarding space than a lot of those other places, but it has a fantastic atmosphere, and visually it's a very attractive place to be. You're right on the banks of the canal, you're right beside town, there's good food places, there's good bars and stuff like that. So it's just a very nice social hub to be at. So for me personally, if I wanted a skate space, I'd do something like Portobello, where, again, it's central. It's not just for skating. It's not like if skateboarding stopped tomorrow, that space would still be used. But you could build a skate park, and if skateboarding stopped tomorrow, then it'd never be used. So in my mind, it's like, build something for the future that's going to make sense in many regards. Have an open space, have materials that are, durable. Have them in such a way so that it can be for different levels, people who are just starting to skate or rollerblade or whatever it is, or people who are very advanced, or have it so that it actually doubles up as a chair for people to sit down if they're tired, So there's all of these different things. Like, they can be done very simply, but the main thing is to get the point across that it's not a skate park you're looking for in these spaces. It's like a social hub. You want a place that makes the city better, and people can use it and get along. Weaver Park is the closest example we've got, and the whole idea there originally was to get a skate park within the city, but then the skateboarders came together with the residents and said, no, let's just get a park for the people of the city, together. And we never really wanted the skateboarding bowl in the center of it, which is a bit of a shame, because it does create more of a skate park feel than it actually necessarily should. Like, initially it was more of a street kind of, street plaza, let's say, that, like, was just, you could be commonly found around most places in European cities and stuff. But it was very close, and it's a good attempt, at the end of the day, it is a very good attempt. And to have that as a blueprint going forward, to be like, look, here's a park where there are no separations between the people who are walking through it with their dogs or their kids and the people who are skating there. Everyone's using the same space, and so use that going forward to be like, that could be done on the top of Cable Street. It could be done on, beside Jervis Shopping Centre, it could be done at Portobello, it could be done at Grand Canal Dock. There's no reason to just, put this kind of blanket, oh, well, like, no, it's not designed specifically for this, so it shouldn't be used for this. Like, that's, again, you're just talking about poor planning then, and so many spaces in Dublin are for office workers who stop for a 15-minute coffee on their lunchtime and they go home, and then that's it.
And then that's it. That's something like, of course, city parks were very new to me.
Mhm.
So when I moved to Dublin, I was like, oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot, there's such a beauty when it comes to street sport,
Hmm.
street basketball, football, whatever
Yeah,
it
yeah.
may be. And I think that there's so much potential right now
Yeah.
that I think they're just missing simply by just simple lights, floodlights.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly,
it gets
yeah.
dark at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Shelter,
Hmm.
put a little,
Massive thing that's never considered. Yeah.
yeah, like,
In a country that rains quite frequently, like, you know.
why not? You know, just put a massive gazebo over
Yeah,
it or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Because again, that's the interesting thing, and that's why that's why it's called Take Two as well. Is because my context is everything is private.
Mhm.
Nearly everything is private back home, to the point where if you're playing football, you're trespassing every
Yeah.
time, basketball, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So coming here and you're like, oh, wow, you know, there's basketball, right? Oh,
Yeah.
good job,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
And then it's just like, fuck. Did you not think of that?
There's even just the factor of having the fences around just about every park, you know, from Marion Square to Stephen's Green, you know, even Phoenix Park has large walls around it, you know.
Yeah.
Look, some of those are historical, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, but again, Weaver Park is unique in the sense that I think, to my mind, it's one of the only parks in Ireland, or not in Ireland, but certainly in Dublin, that doesn't have fences around it. And I actually think that that's really special.
Is that for like safety reasons? Your kid can't run off?
Possibly, yeah, but I mean, within the playground of the park itself, there are those fences for that
Yeah.
reason. So you know, you're anticipating that the people who are playing outside of those, you know, outside of the immediate
Time to go in
playground,
the cage.
you know, you have to be sensible enough to, you know. But the park is designed in such a way where it has a boundary, but the fences are only, you know, 4 foot high, and they're surrounded by quite nice, you know, planting and shrubbery and stuff like that, you know. So that makes sense. But the main thing is actually that it's visually, you know, you can see everything in the park from the road. That's really important, so that anyone passing by is going to be able to see what's happening there if something bad is happening there. And the idea therein is that you have self-policing in a sense, so that you know, the more eyes on any given place, the safer it is. You know? That's not to say in O'Connell Street you don't see crazy stuff happen every week now.
Oh my!
But it certainly
fucking
helps.
God.
It helps if it's not down an alleyway, you know.
Yes, that, and it also helps save people from danger. The amount of
Yeah,
drunk people that
exactly,
toss
yeah.
themselves in front of the Lewis just
Yeah,
without knowing, and they're just immediately like picked up and grabbed.
Exactly, yeah. Like I was driving home 2 nights ago and I seen a guy passed out on the sidewalk. His bike was on the ground. I had my van, so I was like, all right, fuck it. I'll wake him up. How you doing? You all right? Do you want to lift? Like, jump in the back, whatever it is. But he was in, you know, I'm out in the sticks here at the minute, but like he could have just not been found for hours, and who knows what might happen, you know. But again, like that's just this is an example of like why it is that you want to live in areas. And again, Paris is a good example of this. 5-6 stories. There's people there. It's not overcrowded, but there's enough people walking through it consistently so that the whole area is relatively safe. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you have a constant flow of people so that if something does happen within a few minutes, someone's going to see it and they can notify, be it the guards or the ambulance services or whatever it may be, you know. But yeah, like again, like if you design a park that's, you know, caged off or whatever it is, especially quite large parks, you don't know what's happening in there anymore, and you can't get access into it, and it's dark. There's no lights in it, more than likely, you know what I mean? So like the overall thing, that space has now become actually just dangerous, you know. Whereas if you had that open and well lit with public paths going through, be it the center of it or whatever it is, at least then you're genuinely protecting people in those instances.
Yeah.
You know, and again, obviously you still have the option not to go through that park or not, but like this the structure is there so that it's safer than it would be otherwise, you know, if you just
secluded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
Now, onto something a bit, we're still going to be talking about this essentially, but considering that a vast majority of your work is within activism and all that, how do you, and also you work in construction, how do you control your emotions from not going like, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah.
Fuck this.
Yeah.
Because in politics, I think when you just get caught up in politics,
Hmm.
paralysis by analysis nearly, where you're just angry
Yes,
all the time and frustrated and you just feel
absolutely.
helpless. I think
Yeah.
especially right now with the crisis.
Absolutely, yeah. I go through waves of it.
Yeah.
So this is actually happening. This podcast is happening now at a really interesting time, because every time that we release a magazine or we come to the end of a big project, I'm pretty burnt out for at least a week, 10 days or something like that. You know, I'm just
Thank you for coming on. I
no
appreciate
problem.
it.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm
Let's
sick.
talk about your feelings, Phil.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm sick though, is because you know, nearly happens every time.
Yeah, your
My
body
body
shuts
knows
down.
it's just like you need to chill out for a couple of days, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But I have a restlessness in me that won't allow me to sit still for too long, and that's both good and bad, in that it allows me to do loads of really cool things in my life, but it also doesn't allow me to ever just sit there and relax. And the times when I do that, I'm very content and stuff, but like, it's not very long until something pops in my head and I'm like, I need to keep going again, you know, always keep going, sort of thing. And like, I'm okay with that, because I suffered really, really badly for a long time as a young adult, you know, still like go through patches of it. Obviously, like, you never, you know, as long as you're alive, you will go through,
Yeah.
you know, ups and downs. But my early 20s and late teens were very, very difficult in terms of anxiety and depression and going through these ups and downs and bouts. And like, that's not even that long ago, but it was long enough ago to the point where nobody really knew that much about it. I think it's obviously a lot more mentioned now, talked about and stuff like that. People have their own coping mechanisms and they will share them with people. But back then it was just, I just couldn't find anything
Yeah.
to deal with that. You know what I mean?
Oh, we didn't have a name for it. I'm assuming like we're the same age. I'm 25.
Yeah, I'm 27. Yeah.
Yeah, there
so,
you go. As in, when we were 20.
Yeah.
That was
Not that long
nothing.
ago.
You were
Yeah.
called a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And probably if you admitted that you were a perfectionist, someone told you to cut the notions.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
yeah,
your work
yeah.
isn't that perfect, actually. Like, that's what
Yeah.
I used to go by. But there's like, oh shit, no, it's actually anxiety.
Yeah. That's it. It's I think that's just part of growing up and learning how your own mind works. The thing that
Yes.
fascinates me when I look back in like our parents' generation and stuff, I'm like, how did you do it? Like with all of the, you know, because everything that they done at our age now. Like the world has changed since, and we'll be a lot later to the game in terms of like maybe ever getting a house or like having, you know, a family and stuff like that. You know, so I do think for us, it's like every generation, it's never easy. Life
No.
is never easy. But for us, we are now entering a stage of these technologies which are so new that like nobody really knows the answer anymore. You know what I mean? There's no, it's very, very difficult. But, and that's why like you can't really shut off in this day and age. You know, as long as you have a phone and these apps and whatever, you're always able to be contacted, you know, you're always able to. So being out in the sheer is great because you don't get very good connection in many instances, and you're just left to your own devices and you can take in what's around you, be it the same, like, because you're in the middle of the ocean, all you can hear is the sea, you know, birds and sea and just fresh air. So that's why living in places like that offers respite in many ways, obviously. But from a working point of view, I'm still trying to figure out how to do all of these projects without cutting off people that I love and people that I want to spend time with, and without being a moody prick in between, because I still can't figure that out.
Same. It's
you know,
very tough.
it's just, you kind of have to take it day by day. But in terms of like what I would use as coping mechanisms, I think the Stoicism, just reading that and really trying to get a good understanding of that, and having these sayings that you can repeat in your head and immediately bring you back down to a relaxed state are like really important. Everyone's going to be different in how they use them or like how they'll bring themselves to that place. But for me, since I've spent so much time reading it and like really soaking it all in, it still helps me quite a lot to this day, you know. And, you know, like now if I go through a difficult period, if something happens in life, I'm now at a point where I'm trying to sit with that emotion rather than just distract myself, which I would have done previously. Just immerse myself in work and try not think about it. I think it's like a Hemingway quote or something like that, but it's like, a busy bee has no time for sorrow. And I love that quote. But as the years progress, I'm like, yeah, but it also hasn't got time to heal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think it's just about finding that balance where you want your work to fuel you, like Marcus Aurelius and all that kind of stuff. It's like you are here to work.
Yeah.
why stay in bed?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
butchering the quote, but that's
Yeah.
basically it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, Marcus is right, you know, let's go.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh, fuck, life is passing me by.
Yeah.
Of course, we're here to enjoy it, but we're also here to work.
Mm-hmm.
And where is that sweet spot? And I think life is just figuring out what that sweet spot is.
Yeah.
The sweet spot might be when we're...
It could be, yeah,
you know,
hopefully.
you know,
I hope to God it is, you know.
As in, are you ever going to get it right?
Probably not, you
No.
know. But like, again, you know, certain people are probably, you know, they are perfection stuff. My thing is actually, I just prefer everything done over than perfect, you know what I mean? But I'm always going to try and strive to like do better and stuff like that,
Of
you know.
course.
But yeah, like, it's just interesting. The older you get, the more experiences you learn and the more perspective you gain. And if one of the Stoics, you know, kind of, what are they? One of the things that they do to try and like, you know, put things into perspective is imagine you're coming from like a higher place looking down on the world, and it's like you looking at the ground and just seeing ants running around. It's like, it's so insignificant, like, you know. So that's why I try to not take things too seriously as much as possible. But like, it's hard not to get wound up. Like, if I go online and I see this outrageous decision or comment from someone in public life, in the government, whatever it is, I'm like, how could you think this is so silly? Or if I'm going through traffic and someone nearly kills me on my bike, and I'm like, why, what was the point in that, you know? It's hard not to get wound up by that stuff, but like constantly putting that into your head over time of just like, let it go, it can help quite a lot. But then you don't want to become passive either, right? Because you don't want to, it's important to stand up for yourself, or stand up if you see something wrong. And I found that I would have done that a lot more, I think, when I was younger in streets, in cities and stuff like that. If I seen something that I thought was messed up, I'd probably get angry about it immediately to try and stop it. Now I'm just like trying to like, it's harder, you know, like the more things come to your mind now as you get a bit more experience, you're like, I don't want to get involved here because then I might end up getting, you know, something bad might happen to me, sort of thing, you know. There's these doubts and fears that come into your mind. I think when you're younger, you're a little bit more just like, I don't care, this is wrong, blah blah, you know. But it is important to like stand up and call out something when it's wrong, you know. But then you don't want to get lost in this horrible echo chamber of like Twitter or Instagram or something like that either, you know. I think talking to people in person is always the best way, and skating is one of the few activities that takes place in streets and cities all the time, and you're constantly dealing with people, and it's not up to you who it is that you deal with, you know, be it security guards, police, random strangers on the street who don't like you or whatever it is, you know. But you got to learn them social skills, or else it's always going to be a struggle for you to like go anywhere and skate, you know. For sure.
I remember I always get so fascinated whenever I meet Minty, like Evan, because it's just like something very simple where we're doing something and someone chimes in and I'm like, hey, sorry, you know, we're doing something, da, da, da. He's like, oh, I'm staying here. And then Evan just turned, like, he is obviously more confident because he has had to deal with so many confrontations all the time. That's something that I don't fall on my ass every day, like in front of people, and have to like get up and do it again.
And you have to laugh it off, and you have to laugh quicker than they will.
You have to laugh quicker than they will. If it hurts, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, and if someone tells you to leave, you're like, I'm not going.
Depends. I think as time has gone on, and I get older, and I just see a security guard with a job, and I just feel bad now. But it's funny, like, you know, years ago, it was very aggressive, immediate stance security guards would take to you as a skateboarder, and I think that's kind of gone now. I think it's like the security guard comes out and it's like, oh, sorry lads, you know, I have to kick us out. You're like, yeah, no, that's cool. But years ago, like, you would have gotten assaulted, like regularly assaulted by like Trinity College. Their securities were scumbags, you know, UCDs, scumbags, certain other buildings and stuff. You'd know, like, you'd know if that security guard was there. You're like, I don't know whether I'm even going to try this now because it's dangerous.
Yeah, but now we have this.
But now you have your phones. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah, that's probably why it's so different, you know?
Do you want to be temple born?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, listen, like, if we were to go a year back.
Yeah.
That fucking caused havoc for Temple Bar because of like all the money that they had to pour out and all that kind of stuff. And
it made skaters actually look good because we didn't just recklessly do something, didn't smash the windows or whatever.
That's what I told
people were just there to be like, no, all we want is an apology. We're just here to stand up and say, like, you should say sorry for what you've done because it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And luckily enough for the kids who were involved in that altercation, they had a really strong community behind them, as in the skateboarders. How many people do bouncers do that to that don't have that and get away with absolute murder, you know? And I'm not saying that's an easy job. I see what happens in Dublin City once the moon comes out and it gets, a bit rowdy and stuff like that. It's not a job that I envy, but I have also witnessed very many people power trip in those situations before as well.
The CCTV, it wasn't the CCTV camera actually, it was Temple Bar's live webcam for tourists.
And you think that would be in your mind when you're dragging a child into a pub to slap him around,
Yeah, exactly.
But no, because they don't. They didn't think anything was going to happen from it. And thankfully, it did. Thankfully, people stood up and said, "This isn't right."
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird times, where you're just like, okay, I am living through this. First like COVID, then everything else. It's like, okay, are we going to catch a break? Probably not. But then again, just take yourself back a notch, and I don't think I would have wanted. Although I'm not Irish, so I wouldn't have been here, but I wouldn't want to be a fresh graduate going into the Celtic Tiger.
Yeah.
And then
what happened?
Shit hitting the fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably that's why I think that has a massive influence on the decision makers nowadays.
You're so right, and nobody pays attention to it.
And it's our generation that have to go through, like, it's as if we have really strict parents. But our parents are the decision makers. Yeah. Nobody
really takes the impact of the financial crisis into their mindset anymore.
Yeah.
Even when it was happening, when COVID is happening, when these things are happening, you just have to deal with what's immediately in front of you, and you can't look back on the decisions of whether or not they were right or wrong. But we're far enough gone from the 2008 crash to look at being like, what actually was right and wrong. You see what happened in Cherry Orchard the other day. There's arguments flying around of whether or not that's just these people are always going to act the bollocks and, rally cars around or whatever it is. Or is it that so many, things were cut, be it like community activities or, facilities or like police presence or whatever it is, But like, it's such a huge impact on Irish society. And it's never been righted either, This is something that, and the same people who made those decisions are in power right now.
Yeah.
They're still there,
Yeah.
Like the only reason that the other side of the cheek, Fine Gael, were in power for the last few years, predominantly over Fianna Fáil, was because at the time they weren't the ones who were in power. But, in 2022, everyone knows that they're pretty much the exact same. And yeah, like, again, like how can you, put responsibility on people when the people who are in charge are the ones that caused that?
Yeah. That, and you can't expect much out of people. If, like, let's say you want to live a good life in Ireland, right? You're renting, grand, whatever. It's like, let's say it is what it is. If you want a car.
Yeah. Loads
you don't have money anymore.
Yeah.
For the rest of the year until you're like, totally, after you pay your insurance, you're done.
Yeah.
Petrol, you're done. Of course, you're just gonna be roaming around like doing like not wheelies. What am I saying? Like what are the donuts?
Yeah.
Like donuts, because you can't do anything else.
You're kind of trapped. You're in this space and you can't get out of it. Like it's funny, all these hidden costs and stuff like that. And I spend so much time around younger people anyway, from the skaters and stuff like that, and I get to see their perspectives on things. And they don't know what an apprenticeship is, a lot of the kids, because the schools have never even told them what it is. Now
you guys have TY.
Yeah, the transition year,
which I would assume would have helped a few people out, and
I think sometimes it's looked as a year just to do kind of absolutely nothing.
Oh, it's just
enjoy
to
yourself,
do that walk. What's it called again? Santia. No, I don't know what it is. The one in Spain. That one, the school play.
Yeah, all of that
and
stuff. Yeah.
Illegal employment.
And illegal employment too. That's exactly. Yeah. Getting you ready for jobs bridge, basically. But like that's still like not very many kids in 6th year right now know what a PLC is. They don't know that there are these courses that you don't need a leaving cert for, that are actually geared towards your interest, be it photography, videography, whatever it may be, and you can spend an entire year doing that without having a leaving cert and go to the field immediately that you feel like you want to work in for the rest of your life. there's not very many people who know how an apprenticeship works, that you have to spend 4 years doing it. It's a college degree. You will get paid for doing it, but you'll spend, 6 months on site working 5 days a week, and then 6 months, whatever, in school, and again, yeah, like these things just aren't common knowledge, and it's a real shame, especially even with like taxes and stuff. I know this is always said about schools, like why don't you learn how to do your taxes and stuff, but like what really, like it's such a handy thing to know. Like I've forgotten most of the stuff that I've learned in very many classes, but like that would have been really beneficial for me now running a small business and knowing how to actually file things properly and stuff. So simple stuff like that.
Because then you get to pay an accountant.
Yeah.
And they can do it for you.
Yeah. Outsource everything and just create individuals to be, productive machines in one area for the corporates. That's our school model. It's like at all means just give the corporations what they want as much as possible. But yeah, the hidden costs in Irish society, I think it's like 7-8 grand essentially to get your driver's license in this country, because by the time you add up all the fees for getting the card itself, the physical card, doing your theory test, doing your driving test, doing your lessons, getting whatever card is that you decide, whatever banger you're going to get, or if you're going to spend a bit more. And then by the time you've paid tax, NCT, insurance, petrol costs, whatever it is, and then parking charges and all of this stuff, repair charges, whatever it is, like it's an incredibly expensive thing to own and drive a car in Ireland. And
you need a car to enjoy Ireland.
You do.
I've been here for 4 years. I saw sweet fuck all.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't have a car.
Yeah.
I've got my license, so at least that bit is done.
Yeah.
I got my license at 19. I'm 25.
Yeah.
And I remember moving to Ireland being 21 going, all right, I heard that 25 is when your insurance is cheaper. I'll just wait till then. My fucking birthday rolls around. Go to ask my friend, and he's like, yeah, I just asked the person, because he was trying to get insurance for his own car, and they increased it up to 27 now.
Yeah, and that's what they do. And we allow a cartel to run our insurance industry in Ireland, because back in 2008, one of them went bust, who I think it was Satanta at the time. I can't remember exactly, but since then, we have this structure in Ireland whereby to sell insurance here, if you're a new company coming into the market, you actually need to sign up to say that if your competitor goes bust because they were acting, stupidly, that you have to bail them out. That's actually, and it's why you've got so few insurance companies in Ireland, because no one really wants to sign up to that deal. They're like, well, if this other company just decides to start, underpricing and just do dangerous practices, then we have to bail them out. It's ridiculous, But
what genius thought of that?
Yeah, I know, it's kind of crazy, but then on top of that, then there are so few of them that there's no competition. They can just price signal to each other, right? Jack the prices up now. Okay, we're getting too much heat from the EU. Bring them down a little bit, whatever it is, So and again, we have a massive insurance culture in Ireland where, to do things like skateboarding is a big issue, and people are petrified of you falling on their property. Like it is like the worst thing imaginable for them. Like,
and I have a question for that, actually.
Yeah.
If I am skating, right, and I'm at your skate park, whatever, I fall. Is the suing culture that massive in Ireland?
Not for skating, not skateboarding, no. But in general, yes.
In
general, yes. Yeah.
Is it like as bad as America?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too far off. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And they keep it hush hush though.
Yeah, kinda. Like to my knowledge, still to this day, there's never been a case of a skateboarder taking someone to court because they fell skateboarding on their property. Because at the end of the day, you should lose that. If you're taking your own risks to do what you're doing on a skateboard and you fall and it's your own fault, then why should you be able to sue someone for thousands of euro? But there's many instances of, kids falling in a playground and then suing, or a crash or whatever it is. And then over time, all you're doing is actually ruining everything around you, and then no one can do anything.
Everything becomes lame.
Yeah, everything is too safe. Like it's fascinating to me when you go through the new build to rent fancy apartments through Dublin now.
Yeah.
And they have these, like the playgrounds are just outrageous. They're like, there's nothing there. Like there's like maybe a little hump or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they're so, and the kids, there's 10, 15 rules of things that you're not allowed to do everywhere you go and stuff, and there's no freedom.
I like to go, like whenever I am near like a playground, I like to take a good look at it and be like, what's that for?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
have no idea
Yeah.
what the crack is with that. Um,
Issue 4.
well done.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy with that one, actually.
Is this so 4 years in a row? Yeah.
4 years in a row, but now we've gotten sponsorship from Vans, who are our first sponsor, which is great.
That's congrats.
Yeah, they've been incredibly supportive.
Are they on the back? Where are they?
They are just on the inside. They're about 2 pages in, I think, just past the introduction. Yeah, there you go. They've been really supportive of us. So actually now what we have the ability to do is to do more, basically, because they're supporting us. So instead of doing 1 a year, I'm kind of looking at maybe about 3 a year, give or take.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's going to change. Like, Ireland's never had that.
Yeah.
We've only ever really had, 1 or 2 magazines, and very few of them lasted for that long, and even ever got sort of sponsorship and stuff. And we tried to get sponsorship before, and it just wasn't really happening. But then Vans reached out to us,
Vans,
which is the best people I wanted to work with, frankly. They were like,
it's as if you're a basketball player and you got sponsored by Nike.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Crazy.
And it's amazing, and I think it's gonna make a big difference if that continues, because there's never really been consistent investment in Irish skateboarding, and that's one of the things that's held it back quite a lot, because we've produced very good skateboarders for a long time, but we've never been able to give them the outlets to go and make a career out of it,
Jamie Griffin is
smashing
it.
Fucking brilliant skateboarder, but again, still has to move to London. He can't stay where he is, which is look, that's okay. The industry is where it is, but to get the next Jamie Griffin, there needs to be more. Like, Jamie Griffin's story is incredible, because that's a person who grew up with very, very little to skate and became one of the best skateboarders in the world, just through sheer determination.
Though.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes you also have to look at the it factor, and you always hear about it, but then when you look at Jamie, you're like,
it's brilliant.
I get it.
Yeah, like,
he also had a vision, I think.
I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, that's someone who, like, it's such a beautiful story. I think I can't wait to see where he goes from here, because I think that just like, again, when I'm looking at those kids in Inisheer, I'm like, there's literally no reason why you can't reach the tops of, like, the pinnacles of skateboarding,
especially with Jamie's story of skating in a shed.
Exactly, because
that's what they
no matter how limited the scenario you can be in, you can still become great at this thing. And that's the beauty of skateboarding, and kind of what it offers. And there's a lot of good skateboarders across the world, professionals and amazing skateboarders who grew up in places with very, very little to skate, so, like, the potential is always there for it, and that's the beauty of skateboarding, is that, even if it is just the road that those kids had in Inisheer, even if it is just your shed that Jamie had when he was growing up, you can still utilize that and make it your own and do as much as you possibly can through it, so, like, for me, skating changed as I got a little bit older to mean less about wanting to do the tricks and more about, like, just doing projects, be it the magazine or wherever it is, and more about kind of bringing people together to do stuff, to now where I'm at a point at the moment where I'm like, I want to do all of that, and I want to also explore how much skating can change in society, like how much difference it can make to a place, a community like Inisheer, or a community like Portobello, or a community like Dunleary or Ballyfermot or something like that, like how much what's its actual potential if it's done correctly to change things, because I could look at, oh, well, if I wanted to change the world in that regard, why don't you go into politics, whatever it is. I think it's a horrible game anyway.
I think so filthy.
It's just not something that I'm really that interested in. But with this, I can be creative. I can, keep into contact with people who are my friends or otherwise, and meet new people. And you're constantly coming up with ideas and all of this stuff, and so it's beautiful. The creativity aspect of it is there, but also there's this unknown thing in the near future, because as skating is getting bigger, it's going to become more and more relevant to policy decisions in space, in like parks or like public space and stuff like that. And again, I do think that it has the potential to be very special, and like to get Lena on the cover, the first Irish woman to ever have a skateboarding cover, like, is really special. But it's also a dedication, like it's also like a result, I suppose, of like the work that like skateboards have put in, and then like people who are now blowing up on the world stage of skateboarding who are women, like it's skating is so young that in places like Palestine, where there's charitable built skate parks and stuff. There's no preconceptions in this place as to, oh, this is a male sport or a woman's sport. You know, this is actually for just about everybody. So there's as many, if not more, women in skating in those places than there are men.
So
And now when I go to skate parks in Ireland, I keep noticing very consistently that everyone under the age of 12 who's skating is a girl. You know?
Sky.
Yeah,
Sky
Sky Brown. And it's a massive inspiration. So like the more stories like that you get, the better. And then the more skating is proving itself to be a very powerful way to get people active physically, mentally, creative, whatever it is, you know. Because again, the thing with skating is it's everything and it's nothing at the same time. It's a sport, but it's also like kind of more like an art, you know. It's creative, but it's also like, you know, it's physical and stuff like that. So you can skate and you can just think about the tricks, or you can actually skate and think about it from a creative standpoint behind a camera.
The
you know,
videographers, that's what I found especially fascinating, because I was always so interested and would be like looking at the Red Bull events and all that.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I really like how they film things.
Yeah.
And the photography, because that's something else that I wanted to ask you is, let's say someone is really fascinated by the skateboarding culture, but they don't want to skate, but they want to take photos that end up on this magazine. How what model did you set up?
So this is the thing, like there's so many good photographers that I know and that I've even attempted to do skating photos with them, but it's so difficult. A skater will know what the photo should look like even if they're not a photographer. But a photographer who isn't a skateboarder, that it's just nearly impossible to explain it.
Yeah.
Because when you look at that cover, for instance, you know, it's caught in the exact, like the millisecond right time, you know, the right angle, the right distance. All of it is, it's about trying to make the trick itself look as difficult as possible and getting whatever it is in your surroundings in then as well to like kind of heighten it and make the photo look better, you know? But if you don't know how the skate trick itself should look, then it's going to be very difficult to take the skate photo, you know, because that's where the knowledge of skating comes in. So it's such a big, you know, part of skate photography. And skate photography has suffered in years recently because everything's moved to video now, you know, like there's a lot of people filming in Ireland, but there's very few people taking photographs in Ireland because look, the Goblin's only a couple of years old. It's not that old, but some of the young guys who we've been working with since are getting very good and they're going places and stuff, which is like what we want to see, you know. We want to encourage more women to start taking photos and you know, and just keep pushing that as much as we can. But it's really difficult. Like skate photography, like I've always really been on the other end of the camera in terms of like, you know, being the person getting photographs of you know, with tricks and stuff like that. But you know, the skate photographer usually is a very unique individual in that it has to be spur of the moment, you know. It's like you never really plan these things out too much, and then if it's spur of the moment, you've only got like a couple of minutes to think about what the best possible angle is going to be, like how the lighting is going to be, you know. And then look, you can do little bits of editing afterwards, but for the most part the photo is what it is,
natural most of the time.
Yeah.
Now tell me this, when it comes to the dynamic bit, like in the creative community, and then niche it down to skating, where would people mostly like butt heads? Is it just in the photography aspect?
As in like would filmers butt heads with photographers or
is it with the skaters, or is it sometimes difficult to shoot a skater because they're so determined and stubborn?
I get you. Yeah. So this is really interesting with skating, right? As opposed to just about any other like sport, right?
Yeah.
If you have a person who will score you, you know, 40 goals in football a year, whatever it is, it literally doesn't matter what that person's personality is like. They will be put in that team and they will be like the most loved person ever. If a skateboarder was a dick, they wouldn't be on a team, because that means that the team would have to hang around with that person and go on trips with them for long periods of time, and it would be that everyone would fall out and more than likely people would leave that team. You know what I mean? So like, to be a skateboarder, generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but like you have to be nice, you know, to an extent. Like you have to be sound. And this is the thing with skating, is, you know, so much of skateboarding is actually just hanging out. like hanging out with people, you know what I mean, like chatting, whatever.
Taking turns, I'm assuming. If
Yeah,
you're
like
skating.
yeah, like if you're at a spot, it's like not everyone is there with headphones in, being like, I'm just skating, you know, I don't want to like talk to anyone else. Some people will do that, but like for the most part, people are just conversating between their goes and, you know, just having a laugh and like, oh, how you know, whatever it is. Surfing, I think, suffers from that because just by the nature of being in the water, you're kind of more distance and stuff, and and you know, you're waiting on this wave that's going to come. If you miss it, you miss it, and it's a problem. But like with skating, like those ramps aren't going anywhere, so you're just there chatting and stuff. So personality is very important. People know, because skating is still a small world, even though it's blown up so much in recent years and stuff. People will still know if a pro is a dick, and if they find out they are, they're kind of just like, I'm not really that gone on that person anymore, and then that person's favorability will wane, and then actually their career will wane because of that too, then, you know. And again, skating always goes through these cycles of like what's cool and what's not, you know. It's constantly changing and stuff. Like so it's interesting, like what keeps skating cool is the personalities and the creative types and stuff like that, but obviously that's always changing and what's in and what's out and stuff like that. But like and then like I don't know, the button heads thing is, you know, I wouldn't see it from an industry perspective as much, but you can like always go onto these online forums like what's the really well known one? I think is it Slap, and I actually just don't go onto these things at all because I'm no interest in them. But you can like look at all the beefs between people and stuff like that, whatever it is. But it's just like, I don't know, it's just gossip.
Oh, that's a little bit of gossip that sometimes just helps.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, there's gossip here too. There's plenty of it. People love to moan. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
they do.
It's funny in some instances.
Part of the process.
Stuff, you know?
There's a reason why pop culture exists.
Yeah,
and it's because of all the gossip.
Yeah,
and who fucked who, and who screwed over this person, and who is going to be in prison because fraud. So yeah, I love that.
But like there are instances where that can actually destroy a skateboarding scene too if it gets bad enough, you know. Like there are places even in Ireland where like in recent times, like, you know, people have fallen out with each other, wherever it is, and it's really sad to see that then, you know, because at the end of the day, like I was making this point to some kids before that like they didn't really get along with this one other kid who was skating and stuff, but I was like, look, like you are skateboarders, you know, like at the end of the day when you're going through a street and stuff, like people aren't looking at you like is there any difference to anybody, you know. Like if you have a skateboard, you like to everyone who's looking at you from the outside world, like you're just the same people wherever it is. They're not looking at you like, oh, you're so and so and he's so and so and I don't like blah blah blah. But like if you get hassle wherever it is, like you need that other skateboarder to back you up, you know. And like you're going through tense situations at times skating in cities and streets and stuff, you know. You'll be dealing with security guards and aggressive public people and stuff, you know, stuff like that. So like you have to have each other's backs at the end of the day, and you know, that's where the community aspect of it is really important. Like the Temple Bar situation is a very good example of that, you know. Like those kids are only young. They probably only knew, like, you know, they probably obviously knew a good few people, but like not everybody knew them, but like a lot of people stood up for them who had never even met them before, you know.
Yeah, so because they're like, no, we have to make a stunt on this.
Yeah.
Skating has like such a soft spot for me, I think, especially because obviously looking at like women in sport, I've seen it so many times where teams just dwindle down and the women's team is no longer there.
Yeah.
Or the class is no longer there. And as you kind of said, when it comes to skating, some bad dynamic will just make something flop.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's just something so important to me when I see like such a thriving community, especially looking at what Skate Kitchen did in New York, for example, and then popping up and saying like Girl Skate in Dundalk, for example. You're just like, I see who you guys are channeling.
Yes.
And well done, and keep going. Even for young kids or just young girls that aren't into camogie, they're not into like sports in general, but they're not into like dance or art. You have this, like it can be done.
Yeah, totally.
And it's physical, but you don't have contact sports. So Philly, you're doing it. Well fucking done. What fair play. I think you're probably the only guest that has done so many things and properly. You know what I mean? I still have no idea how you do it, but I'm sure you have a massive team behind you that really
I
does
do have an incredible, like, and this is the thing, like, it's like from my family to my friends, like the
Yeah.
people behind me are like actually outstanding. Like, I get to be like the face on the night when I'm introducing what's happening or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But like, it's all the people that are kind of around you. Like at the end of the day, like every page on that magazine is a piece of work and creative work and effort that another person has
Yeah.
done to put it together with everybody else to make a project where they can all then come together. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to be able to just I'm just the monkey who runs around putting things together. I'm like,
Yeah.
right, I send this in here, put that file there, put it together, whatever it is. Connecting people who can put a magazine together to like have the ability to make an interview or make it interesting and something like that, or like getting the photographer to communicate with so and so, whatever. It's really and truly what I'm doing is just like being in the middle of a circle and just talking to people. I mean, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Could this be done? Could that be done? And stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and then being given support back for it as well, because I recently even have gone through difficult patches, and then I'm being told like, well, think about it, like all of this people are together at this minute, you know, even on Inisheer there's tough days in the wind and the rain and stuff like that, and you're like, why are we here? And you know, you're kind of questioning that because you're working so hard, you're working like 14 hours a day or whatever it is, but then you're like, nah, this is why, look, the kids are here, like, you know, they're stoked, they're unbelievably happy, and we're all here together just to do this because we love skateboarding, and we love each other even, like, you know, it's really, you're doing this thing for people as opposed to skating, you know, whatever about skating, at the end of the day it all comes down to people, like, so
Because even if they just let go of that skateboard, they still have that friend.
exactly,
Or they still know that I can have a pint over there.
Yep, exactly, yeah.
What's next for you?
I'm looking forward to constructing the skate park in Dunleary. I think that will actually be really nice because we've been given creative, like we've been given the design on that too, so we can actually get creative.
Or something?
I mean,
else?
like technically, yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, the long-term goal is to do the Irish Skateboarding Association, and that's in the works now. I've been working on that for the last 2 years, just trying to push that ball, but it's a very slow-moving, you know, wheel, so it will happen.
I would have thought that would be fairly quick since it's an Olympic sport.
No, we're still in draconian Ireland where, you know, we then have to team up with like every other sport who uses a plastic wheel, essentially, you know. It's kind of crazy. But that's just where we're at the minute. But I think that a lot of that will get resolved in the next 18 months. So that's the plan for the long term. I think if we can get that set up and it's there for future generations to use and get funding and stuff like that, then all the better. And then for me, I am gonna chill for a couple of days and then work on issue 5 straight away, because we want to do, well, we've booked out the Sugar Club for November 25th, I think it is. So we're going to release issue 5, do the first time we'll do 2 magazines within a year, and premiere Rose of the Streets as well.
Wait, that's 20.
It's like 8 weeks away.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. At first I was like, oh, that's at the end of the year. You're fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, no, it's September.
It's a very, very short period of time to put it together. But again, I'm fairly confident of it because like the Goblin team at the minute is super strong. We've got Michael McMaster, who's come on to do a lot of the editing and creative direction. And then Aidan Moore, who's like, me and Aidan have been working on this together for years now. And he's absolutely amazing, does all of our design. Everything that makes us look professional in that magazine is down to Aidan. You know, and then, you know, that's just like the immediate crew, but outside of that, there's a lot more people who are putting stuff together. So yeah. Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining me, Phili.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, TJ. And thank you everyone for listening. I forgot to say that. Cheers.